Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy. We have reached the 20th film in our James Bond Retrospective series, the Big 2-0, at what was at the point when it came out, the 40th anniversary for Bond, so it's kind of a big deal. This is, of course, directed by Lee Tamahori and is the final Pierce Brosnan film. We were just mentioning, literally just before we went live on this, that it's been really quick turnaround for us on the channel to get through all the Brosnans. He only did 4, but it's been even quicker for us. We've got them done in like a matter of weeks. But this is the infamous. This is Die Another Day. George, I know you've been looking forward to this one. I've been cautiously optimistic about this one because I watched this for the first time today. This is sort of like the final Bond film that I hadn't seen, that I have now seen, obviously, for this review. And yeah, I don't know how this review is going to go. It's going to be very interesting, I think, on all the opinions surrounding this one. But before we get into it, over to George with the socials.
Absolutely, guys. So as you can see, we have Brendan joining us from A to Z, as well as Tom for another discussion. I'm not going to tease about what's to come, but Die Another Day is you're on to D in yours at the moment, so people can assume it's coming very soon without giving dates away. But this is going to be a fun one. And for those that don't follow them on social media or ourselves, hit them up: Facebook, James Bond A to Z Podcast; Twitter, A to Z; Instagram, James Bond A to Z, and of course, we've got a link in the description for all these streaming sites you can get them on. So listen to them on there. Some really good discussions on the way. And for you guys at home that have been waiting for this with us, comment below your thoughts on Die Another Day. Just put all your thoughts out there. It's been out almost 20 years now. You don't have to hide anything. What worked, what didn't work, what's the best thing about it or the worst thing about it. Just comment it either way. So I'm going to be interested to read up on what some of you guys are putting. Of course, our socials: Facebook, Cinema Savvy; Twitter, cinema_savvy; letterboxd.com/cinema savvy. But as always, Brendan, you are new to the channel, and we love to put everybody on the spot with this. So you guys at home will be able to see on your screen now. We have a favorite Bond ranking we've been getting from everybody that's jumped on the show so far. So we've had 9 people so far. Brendan, you're going to be the 10th. Do you have a favorite Bond? Technically not the best, because I think everyone knows Connor is deep down the best, but do you have a favorite Bond to make it fun for us?
Yeah, Brosnan.
Absolutely. Right, there we go. That was already... I knew. I had a Photoshop lined up and ready to go.
It's all a fix.
You've done your research.
The Brosnan train has left the station, and he's now joined with Roger Moore, so I'm excited, but... We wanted to get you on. I listened to you guys. I know you're a big Brosnan fan, and I saw you defending Die Another Day. And I thought we need him on this, and I'm excited for this one. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I want to kind of head over to you guys. So we always talk about the first time watching this. I saw this at the cinema age 6. So this is the first Bond film I saw at the cinema. You're not going to get a massive essay like The World Is Not Enough, because I just saw it at the cinema and I really enjoyed it. And I'll get to that later, but I didn't know this was the 40th anniversary for many years, probably until Skyfall came out. I was like, hold on, there actually was an anniversary back in 2002, and it's Die Another Day, and I never figured this out. So, not to be ageist, you guys below, can you remember that 40th anniversary and kind of help me and Chris, or people at home that might not know how big this was back then?
It makes me quite sad that you were only 6, because I think I was 16 when it came out. So this, for me, this was the first one I really went to the cinema and hammered it and watched it 4 or 5 times at the cinema, and really enjoyed it at the time. To be fair, it is fun. It's nonsense, but it's fun. And then as time's gone on, I become more of a snob, I guess, and looked down my nose at it. And I've gone back since, and we'll discuss that. But yeah, this is definitely the first one I really went to town with on at the cinema.
I don't recall. I have very strong memories about seeing this one for the first time. I think I spoke to you before. It's GoldenEye and Tomorrow Never Dies and World Is Not Enough. I have very fond memories of seeing at the cinema. This one I don't remember so well seeing at the cinema, but it's one that I've begun watching more, maybe because we're doing the podcast. But I'm with Brendan. I think it is fun. There is a lot of issues with it, but I've got to say, I came on and I did On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Spy Who Loved Me. What did I do wrong to get invited back for this one? Just was it something I said?
I did wonder if tonight, if we've got the 2 Die Another Day defenders, and then if me and you are going to be championing the corner for like tearing this film a new one. I guess we'll find out as we get into it. But I mean, in terms of first time actually watching it, I don't have a glamorous story. I watched it for the first time today, at home, as you do. But I do remember this film coming out. My friend at the time was a massive James Bond fan, and I remember the trailers for this thing. I think this was probably the first Bond film that I was conscious of, seeing trailers and seeing hype for and everything. I'd probably seen clips, from like some of the Connery stuff and some of the more things at that point, but I remember the trailers. I remember Halle Berry. I remember clips of the car chase on the ice, and I remember the poster. The poster is like very definitive for me. That's like a defining sort of like image I have at the time when it was coming out. And everyone losing their minds, new Bond film at the cinema. I wasn't into Bond at the time, and I kind of turned my nose up at it like, oh, it's not my kind of thing, like action spy things. It's just not my kind of genre. Thankfully now, I've been converted, and it's a genre that I love, but it's not like a really glamorous first time, but I do remember the hype surrounding it at the time. But I didn't invest into it completely.
I feel like you've been held captive and made into
yes,
a Bond fan by George over these last
against my will. Yeah, no.
However many weeks, it's like it's like the opening title scene for this film. It's like you're being waterboarded with Bond. You will like it. It will be your favorite.
I think like just to sort of like get into it, like my first question is because there is some behind the scenes stuff on this film obviously, but I don't know the result of this film, what it is. I don't know how that came about. I don't know how this film got okayed, greenlit. Like, yep, that's a quality product. Let's ship that. That will be what the Bonds fan want. Because in terms of its plot, it's very thin on the ground, isn't it? It's very safe. I was going through the tick list as I always do. It's like, oh, okay, it's another satellite one, another giant space Death Star laser. Okay, tick. And you could argue that maybe that was done because it was the 40th and they wanted kind of an amalgamation of everything that had come before and like a very safe package deal. But just in terms of the direction, it being 2002 as well, me and you, George, have been talking about this, about the over-reliance on CGI. CGI had sort of like come into its, its own in the 90s and was only developing more and more, especially into the early 2000s. And that clearly forced their hand. I feel like that with this one, they just wanted to go for like all show and spectacle and have story and character kind of be damned a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting one because we've not really spoke about the start of the films much. And in this one, I have this just of all the slow-mo stuff that Lee Tamara brought in, which is a really interesting, something that had never been done before and was never done afterwards in James Bond, and it makes it stand out. And I'm just going to leave that there as the word stand out because it's truly terrible in some scenes, but you can't not laugh. It's so funny. The fact it's not intentional is one thing, but you want to have a bit of fun. A villain walking into a room with a black leather jacket in super slow-mo, like swinging across, or the start of the ice chase sequence. There's something really noble about the fact that, as you said, this somehow got through. That there wasn't even like test switch. Like this was like okayed and carried on for the whole film. And you mentioned, I mean, we'll speak about some of the characters later, but the death of General Moon, General Kern, I always get the two mixed up, but it's like the gladiator music, the weird, again, the slow-mo stuff on his face. It's so bizarre, but I think that's what the director brought in. And, we know with certainly in the sort of the latter half of Brosnan onwards, they've had so many different directors, but you can see why they had to switch it up. And we'll go into that probably way more in the Casino Royale video, but a lot of things had to change. And personally, if we're going to isolate the director, I think a lot of this is on Lee Tamahori, and I don't like pinning things on people, but I think a lot of the very questionable things came from the direction, personally.
But the interesting thing about this film as well is that they had done 3 films with 2-year gaps. So GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies, they came out within 6 years. And for this one, they gave themselves an extra year for the anniversary, which means that they should have had an extra year of development for it. It does, putting the whole finger of blame on Tamahori, I think, is a little unfair. But I think that when you watch the behind the scenes DVD extras, and I know this is a sanitized view of what happens when they're Purvis and Wade and working with Barbara Broccoli and Michael J. Wilson, they're writing the script for this film. All they talk about is character. They want it to be character driven. They want it to be about the character. Like, how do we test Bond? How do we put him through something he's not been through before? And that clearly something has gone amiss from the script development stage to the final product, because what we get is far removed. There's even quotes from Purvis and Wade saying they wanted to make a Cold War espionage thriller, and that is 4 words I would not use to describe this film. This is a throwback to, you know, Moonraker, and in fact Moonraker is probably a good example of like a film that it's like. They took a lot of cues from the book to make this film, but something went amiss. And when you again watch the DVD extras and read between the lines, the script that they had and began to change when Lee Tamahori came on board. They said that it was very much a framework, and then they expect the director to come in to put his imprint on it. And something that we learned when we did our episode on it, which will be out soon, is that he came on board very much as a low budget indie director, and this was the first time he'd had a big budget. And whether or not that spooked him, and whether he felt this is Tamahori, whether he had an expectation that he had to make it bigger and more explosive and more cartoony and more comic booky. I think that's my feeling about it, is that he felt that he wanted to make it bigger and badder than it was, and that just didn't translate really.
He was a big advocate of the use of CG as well. There's a few statements that he's gone out and saying how much he believes CG is the future, and then you can see that that's what he's trying to do with this as well. And I also don't like pointing the blame at one person, but if you think about the teams that make Bond, you know, beyond just the director, so the rest of the crew, relatively unchanged throughout Brosnan's tenure. Mm-hmm. So there has to be some shift of, you know, not blame. I mean, I don't hate the film, so I'm not going to say blame, but the result is maybe the result of some of the decisions made by Tamahori.
Yeah, I think the director, obviously, in terms of what you see on screen, and there is a distinct style in this film, as we've mentioned, like the slow-mo and the quick like camera pans and everything, which feels very alien to Bond, and as we mentioned, hasn't been used since, quite rightly so. But also, I think it's kind of, I don't know if there was a disconnect with the writing. Like, I don't know if the script was, you know, went through many drafts, but this feels like it was rushed in like a first draft. Like, there are loads of things in this script that don't add up, that are absolutely ludicrous, even by Bond standards as well. And Bond's done some ridiculous things out of like the previous films before this point. We'll go into it, especially surrounding the villain and like the overall plot, if you can call it that. So although they had like an extra year of development, it still feels so rushed. You know, the CGI, we'll talk about like the CGI later, but you know, the low hanging fruit is always the tidal wave scene, right, with the surfing, and it looks like it's previs. And I know that CGI at the time, you know, was still very much in its infancy, and it was kind of coming, I'd say probably by the mid 2000s is where CGI, you know, really stepped up. You know, you've got, you know, massive big blockbuster films that used it. 2002 still quite early on, I think, for CGI at this point. And it looks awful, and it just looks terrible. I don't know how that was okayed by the producers, how they didn't go, well, hang on, we're seeing what the director's doing here. Maybe this isn't the right guy for the job, because, you know, I don't want to say that they're overbearing with the directors they get. It seems like, you know, they get a director and they let them make the movie they want to make. But especially with the new film coming out, No Time to Die, and I know that's had like, you know, like a whole production thing, but with Danny Boyle coming on board, and he had an idea and they were like, no, we don't want that. Let's get someone else in and change the idea. So it still felt like, you know, you have higher ups that kind of usher it in a certain direction and then let the director do what they want to do. But I don't know how they okayed this direction in the first place. So it's complicated. As we mentioned, like, I don't know if you can pin it all on the director, or was he directing the film that the producers, you know, wanted at the time? Did they want all the glitz and the glamour and the effects to stay relevant for Bond at the time? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And sort of one thing is I was talking about back in 2002, looking at it with a modern lens, this really random up. The Blu-ray box set, to me, is some of the best restoration of old films I've seen. You look at some of the ones from the 60s, the 70s, how they made all that look so good this day. It's made them age so well. And then on this rewatch, you get to Die Another Day, and you're getting some incredible scenes still with stunts, with action set pieces, practical effects. And then you do get some of the waves, the CGI stuff, and it's standing out. Like, so obviously it's going to look even worse in 2021 because it was 2002 back then. But when you've got so many incredible set pieces in the same film, combined with some really awful CGI, I think it makes it look even more sort of obscene. That it's like this lack of consistency. And you know, I'd happily sacrifice to have the wave scene if it meant we got the incredible credit scene, which is a really good way to start off. Because, you know, Chris, going off what you said earlier, when you messaged me earlier, like, the first hour you were loving it.
Yeah.
I think with a Bond film, you want to get in the mood, right? And the pre-credit scene, I've said this every week for the last 4 weeks now. The Brosnan credit scenes, I think, are superior to all the others, and I'm just going to be the first one to go out of whim and say that to me, the Dine of a Day credit scene is the best of the entire Bond franchise. Whether that's a discussion for a video one day in the future, but
I mean, it's good. I don't know if I'd rank it that
I
high,
don't know.
but like
this might be my bias as a 6-year-old watching it at the cinema, right? That you want to go in, you want to see James Bond on a mission, and the whole sort of invading. I'm not going to sound North versus South Korea as a 6-year-old, am I? So you grow up, and it was more interesting watching it as I've got a bit older and know the world a bit more. But the opening action set piece, absolutely love it. Again, it's that one-man superhero army. The diamond explosion, everything about the pre-title sequence, I absolutely love in this. And the hover things, I don't know if there's an official title for them. They look
hovercraft.
Yeah,
hovercraft. They're incredible. Like the whole set piece with it. I don't know if I'm just being biased now, but the minefields, all of it, as an opening statement to kick you into the film, I think Dine of a Day handles it superbly. A really well done opening scene, and also got some weird one-liners as well, and a great way to, I guess, introduce characters that would crop up down the line. One of which stays the same actor, the other one doesn't.
I agree that it's I wouldn't say it's the best. I'm not sure I could go that far, but it is fantastic, and it sets up what should be an excellent Bond film. It really is interesting, that whole, like you say, one-man army going out, taking everyone on, and then he gets captured, and you're like, okay, this is interesting.
Yeah, hovercrafts are cool. There's just nothing more you need to say about hovercrafts. They are awesomely cool, and I think that as an action spectacular, the opening sequence is fantastic. I love the surfing as well. It's something that we talked about. Like, James Bond can surf as well as everything else that he can do. He can also surf like a 30-foot wave as well. That's just so cool. I love the sort of espionage-y, replacing the guy in the chain of like communication with the North Koreans. That's just such a very James Bond thing to do. That was something that happens obviously in Diamonds Are Forever as well. Yeah. It's excellent work from Vic Armstrong as well. He did a lot of second unit direction on that. And I think I think a lot of the time Vic Armstrong gets a lot of stick for taking control of the film in terms of the action sequences, but I think here his work really comes into its own. I think really is spectacular, and I think the rest of the film is a bit flat compared to this sequence. But yeah, it's great. And then obviously we've got the torture scene as well, which plays through the titles, which is just unheard of, unprecedented in a James Bond film, isn't it? That sort of level of torture.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, Madonna song aside, which we'll talk about later, I was loving this opening. It felt very different. There were moments it almost felt like a Rambo film, like just, the setting and the torture scene especially, which was so different for Bond. And, talking about the title sequence itself, it actually serves to show a passage of time. It serves a narrative function and not just kind of like a spectacle or a musical number. It's actually intrinsic to the plot, and it's an effective way, I think, of covering, was it 14 months, I think, isn't it, just throughout the opening title. So I really appreciate that. The action's great. The bit where I think he's got sort of like his two lackeys and they kind of drift and turn back around and open fire at Bond. Great stuff, great vehicle work, stunt work, all of that stuff. And yeah, as the film started off, I was watching it because I thought going into it, this is just going to be nonsense beginning to end. And it started off and I was like, okay, no, that's a solid opening, title sequence. It's, the songs, whatever, but it's fine. The whole fact that Bond's being tortured and, M kind of turns her back and is really dismissive of him, and he's kind of left out to dry essentially, and he's got to find his own way. I thought this is a really interesting direction to take the character of Bond. Like, we haven't really seen this before. We've seen where he's retired, or License to Kill especially, where they advise him not to go after the one who maimed Felix, and he kind of turns his own back on them. But I thought it was this really interesting way of looking at MI6 and the character of M. We said that she's always kind of ruled the roost with an iron fist, but she's always kind of liked Bond. In this instance, it's like, no, she is ruthless. Like, deep down, she can be ruthless. And the trade-off, everything like that, I was on board for this. Jumping later on in the film, you get to Havana. I was like, when does this become really bad? Because I thought I was against the grain. I was like, I'm really enjoying this film. You know, it's probably not one of the best Bond films, but I'm having fun with it. And it's not until the halfway point where all the problems started to compound on themselves for me. So in terms of an opening, I wouldn't say it's the best Bond opener ever, but I do think it's a really strong opening, and I think quite subversive in the whole narrative over the music, as I mentioned, and the fact that we get to see like Bond's torture and him in that situation in the first place. That's kind of been unheard of before this point.
Yeah, and sort of heading into talk about Brosnan with it being a sort of final film, it is a really interesting set for the character that, you know, with the character of Bond, you know, he is that superhero, and I'd imagine at the time, if I was this age, I think it'd be quite a shock to see Bond get captured, get tortured, you know, become George of the Jungle for about 20 minutes. We keep joking, saying that Pierce Brosnan's like contract obligated to take his top off in every film we've seen him in. It doesn't stop in this film as well, but it's one of them where it's a really interesting journey with him. But for his final film, I don't think he's that bad in it either. You know, you look at Connery's last film, and you know he's more there for the divorce money that he's going through and whatnot, and you can tell his heart's not in it. You know, Roger Moore, it's just too odd, being horrible. Dalton's final film, superb. Craig's, we haven't got to it yet, but we will be, fingers crossed, in the next month. But in terms of a Brosnan one, the setup is there for it to be, I think, extraordinary. That, you know, once again, no one went into this knowing this would be his final performance. As James Bond, if you want to bring in technicalities, obviously, of course, he did the PS2 game, Everything or Nothing, that came out after, which I still need to play. But I think he's fine in this film. I think, you know, when you're 4 films in, you know what you're going to get from him. You know he can do the action, you know he can do the physicality, and you know he can turn the charm up. So I don't have a problem. I wouldn't say he's as good as The World Is Not Enough. I think that's Brosnan's best performance, and we spoke about that last week as well. But it is one of them where the issues can't be pinned on the actor. And so obviously what happened after, you know, obviously they went the set praise, they brought in Daniel Craig. You know, it wasn't on him. It wasn't, we've got to get rid of this guy. It was never that. That was more, it was the outcome of the film, and something needs to be changed. And he's a kind of casualty of it. But I love what they do with him. And as a direction point, it feels like where it's not heading with the Craig era, but the ruthlessness of M, you know, sacrifice. You look at the start of Skyfall as well, when, you know, they take the shot and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of a sign that they're slowly heading into this more dramatic Bond, which we've seen glimpses of over the Brosnan era. But I do think when the time came that the reboot was needed. But you can definitely get the sort of the vision of where they're heading with what they want to do with the character. That's how I've always kind of seen it.
Yeah, the thing with Brosnan is he always wanted the job. He always wanted to keep going, and given the chance, he'd probably still be doing it now. He just loved doing the role, and that's what you didn't get with like Connery. Diamonds Are Forever, he's clearly disinterested. And Roger Moore,
Live Twice, and Thunderball.
Oh, and you, and Roger Moore is too old by the time he's still in the role. Lazenby only did 1, and there's a big gap between Dalton, but Brosnan always wanted this role, and he gives it his all. And he hasn't put a foot wrong in the 4 films he's done, for me personally.
He puts an emotional performance in for this one, I think, and that's what he always wanted to do, was bring some emotion to Bond. And I think the things that sort of typify his era are he brings some depth to Bond, and there's depth to the characters around him as well, as you mentioned with M as well. Just a fun fact about the 14 months he spends in prison. It's 14 months, as pointed out, I think, by Brendan the other day, because it puts it before 9/11. So it means that Bond is out of action for 9/11, and that's sort of explains, that's why it's 14 months, because of the release date of the film. And obviously then when he comes out, M says to him, you know, the world's changed, and that's their sort of token gesture towards 9/11, which I think is really, really interesting. I think Brosnan gets better with every film that he does for James Bond, and I think he would have done the 5th one, as Brendan said, but unfortunately, as with these things, you've got to follow the money, and I think he wanted more money, and they just couldn't justify it. I think because of the legal things that were going on with MGM and with Sony and what have you, it just became untenable. And yeah, it's easy to say, oh, it was the result of the film that caused the reboot. It's a combination of things. The film was, you know, did really well. It was the highest grossing Bond film when it came out. Mm-hmm. So they could have just done another one like this, and they probably would have done if Pierce Brosnan hadn't pushed for more money, if the critical opinion hadn't turned against it, and if the situation with Sony and MGM was more stable than it was, I think we could have had a Casino Royale with Pierce Brosnan as his final film, and I think that would have been a really interesting picture. But it's a what if machine, isn't it?
Yeah, I do think it's a shame that this is Brosnan's last one, just from the quality of the film. For me, it's for any of you horror aficionados out there, it reminds me of Jason X a little bit. It's very dull. I mean, they don't go to. Oh, there is a space laser. I guess that's as close as we get to space in this film, isn't there? But it just feels tired, this one, like it was in need of a reboot, I think, after this one. Or if Brosnan had gone on, I hope they would have reined it back in a little bit and sort of gone to like a back to basics approach. And that's kind of like the peaks and wanes that the Bond films go on, really. It's like when they get too silly or too comedic, they kind of bring it back in, rein it back in for the following one. And I don't blame Brosnan for that at all. Like, I think, and this kind of goes for all the actors as well. We're talking about Halle Berry in just a second. I think the actors are just as good as the material they're given, and I just don't think they were given particularly good material. I think, they set the stage for a good dramatic Bond film at the beginning, and not to say you couldn't have some fun along the way. It's a Bond film, for God's sake. Like, have some fun, and it's Brosnan too, but it hits that tipping scale for me, like the midway point, and this just goes off the deep end quick. And I just don't think there's enough dramatic material in the film, like by the midway point, to justify for the character of Bond. I don't think he really gets much to do other than be a superhero. I don't know if we want to talk about Halle Berry in a second as well, because we know that she can act. The early 2000s is questionable. Storm has some quite shaky lines in the X-Men films, and the less said about that Catwoman film she made, the better. But I think did she win an Oscar or was nominated for an Oscar?
She won an Oscar while this was in production. In fact,
really? Yeah,
she won the Oscar, and she also presented the Oscar to the sound designer on Die Another Day, and they both obviously came back to set with their Oscars. There's a really sweet moment of them like greeting each other. Mm-hmm. She knew she was giving his Oscar, but she kept it a surprise from him. Obviously, she didn't know he was going to win. But, but she'd won, and she came back, full of energy to the set. She just spoke about like how exciting it was to be doing the work. It's great to win the plaudits, but you don't get the plaudits without doing the work. So she was so excited to come back, and then this is the film that was made. It's a strange irony.
Yeah, and it just goes to the writing for her. Like, I like the concept of the character again, like a very capable Bond girl is always nice, and what we're always kind of clamoring for in the Bond franchise. But I just remember last week in the comments when we were very harsh on Christmas Jones, probably quite rightly so, and everyone was like, if you think Christmas Jones is bad, just wait until you get to Jinx. And again, like, I don't blame Halle Berry for it. I don't blame any of the actors for it in this. It comes down purely to the writing for me on this one. You could argue direction as well, but it's the words on the page, isn't it? And I just don't think they're there. I just don't think there's enough meat. I don't think there's enough sort of like drama for the characters to really develop fully over the course of the film.
Yeah, Jinx is such a weird one, because I love the idea of, I mean, so many Bond films have done it before, female spy, he ends up working with her and that kind of thing. And getting Halle Berry in, obviously at the time, I didn't see Monsters Ball till many years after this, so I didn't even know it came out before until I was younger. And then I think X-Men 1 had come out at this point, so she was still quite sort of up and coming. And you've seen the films she's done since, where, she was in John Wick 3, and you got some tremendous action set pieces with her and Keanu, and it's a really interesting one to look at. I don't think she's that bad in this. I think you've sort of nailed it there, Chris. I think she's just the best with what she's got. And I think, I know this sounds really odd, she kind of has the swagger of a Bond girl. And it's like, I feel that she's gone into it knowing what it is to be a Bond girl. And she feels, I'm not going to say she feels like one from the 60s, because that's really unfair. And that's what I said about Christmas Jones. But with Halle Berry, I don't know, a lot of people discuss the coming out of the ocean, the reference to Dr. No, of course. And I'm not trying to say she played it like a traditional Bond girl, but there's something there where I can't place my finger on what went wrong, because she could be so much better. And there is some material there, but some of the delivery of some of the lines is so weird. It's some cringe humor, some weird stuff. And I don't know what happened there. I don't think she's as bad as others, but I just think, the way I see a lot of these Bond films, with villains, with the actors, this is their moment to be in a Bond film, and you don't want it to be messed up. I'm not saying it's messed up, but if you're going to think this would have been Halle Berry in a Bond film, I feel like it was a shame it was this, when we could have had her do something so much better. You could say about a lot of characters in Bond, but there's just something about Halle Berry. I don't know. I don't mind her. I don't dislike her as much as everyone else.
I'm with you on this. I think I actually quite like her, quite like the character. The lines that have been put in her mouth, maybe not so much, but and some of the dialogue or the back and forth between Jinx and Bond is stilted, especially the first meeting in Cuba. But in general, I think she's a strong Bond woman, and she stays relatively strong until the end, where she's trapped in the ice palace without any sort of gadget, which seems unlikely given that she's working for the American government. But no, I and Halle Berry is a great actor as well. But yeah, like you say, she got the Oscar and then ended up making this.
She's versatile.
Hard knocks. Yes.
She gets top billing on the film with Pierce Brosnan, which is I think one of the first times it ever happens on a Bond film. When you look at the posters, she's got equal billing, and they're sort of just portrayed as being side by side as equals. And they always say, oh, he's Bond's equal, but for the first time ever on the posters, she really is. And I think they really pursued her to be in this film, and I think it was the right decision. But you're right, it was. She just gets some absolutely dreadful lines. That really stick in the memory, unlike the great lines that you get from other Bond girls, in the past. They're memorable for the wrong reasons, I think, and that's not her fault. They were planning a spin-off film for her, right? So they had aspirations for it to be this the next big Bond movie to come after Die Another Day, and I can't see how, when they saw the finished film, they felt, oh, that's a viable option. They say that they wouldn't go ahead with it because they felt that female-led action movies didn't generate enough box office, which is a fair enough, I think, at that time, decision to make. But I just can't see where the logic was behind saying, yeah, this is going to work.
I think it's just, she was massive at the time, wasn't she? So I think, from a lucrative business standpoint, it makes sense to get a spin-off there. And, as I mentioned with like Catwoman, I forget which year Catwoman came out. I think it was after this. I think it was like 03, 04, I think, wasn't it? I think it was a little bit after this film. So it made sense at the time, with the star power that they had. And as you mentioned, like, she was all over the trailer. She was all over the posters and everything. It's just, all the dialogue is just innuendo, isn't it? There's just no, even any semblance of depth. Like, I'm not asking for loads. Like, we've seen, some of the caliber of the Bond girls that have come before that. I'm not asking for much, just a little bit, like even her name, like, what does she say? Like, oh, they call me Jinx because I've had some bad relationships in the past. And that's basically the extent of her character. That's all I really know about her by the end of the film. And, they bookend it with even more innuendo with her. There's just not much beyond that. And I don't think they have really great chemistry, her and Pierce Brosnan, in this film, really. Not to say, I'm sure they got on fine, on set together. I don't think there was any sort of like bad mouthing or anything like that, but maybe it's the writing, but I just didn't get like a good sense of chemistry, especially like the previous Bond films that we've had with Brosnan, where I think he's had, you could argue Michelle Yeoh, maybe there's not much chemistry there in terms of the character, how she's written, but the other ones, GoldenEye, definitely all the people in that, and The World Is Not Enough, especially. It was really lacking in this one. And just while we're on the topic of Jinx, the last thing I'll say, it's kind of more about the CGI. What was going on with that weird swan dive that she does off the balcony in Havana? Where anyway.
I love that moment. I think that's great.
Was she fully rendered in CGI in that part, or was that her and it was just in front of a green screen? I couldn't tell. It looked very Uncanny Valley in that moment, like the motion of the camera and how she goes over the air. I don't know.
That whole scene at the top of that when she jumps off is actually not in Cuba. Pierce Brosnan says in the commentary that was just in the UK with a screen.
Oh, was it? Yeah. Well, I guess, when you've got a green screen, a blue screen, you can just take it anywhere, can't you? You're really portable with it, I guess. But, shall we talk about the villains then, George? The first one's very interesting. Which actor playing this character do you want to talk about first?
Let's so I only ever see Toby Stevens, to be fair, and that sounds really bad for Gustav Graves. But shall we get him out of the way? I say out of the way, it's probably going to be a big talking point. Toby Stevens, who I've recently found out is the son of Professor McGonagall, which completely blew my mind. That's changed everything about what Going as Die Another Day for me. I don't know why, but I'm gonna be the one that says it. I like Gustav Graves. There is something about Toby Stevens' performance which I think is wonderful. I think he gets the script. I think he's read whatever he's had to read. He's looked at it. He's took everything into account. Think I am going to give the most over the top, ridiculous, megalomaniac villain performance in a very long time in a Bond film. And my word, he is magnificent. I don't even know where to sort of take it, because obviously, when you're younger, I always clocked that, he was that guy from the credit scene. Today's day, it probably looks quite bad that he was sort of like and there was really off point. There was someone on Twitter recently that claimed they're Asian when they're like American. They spent like 20 grand to do facial surgery and stuff. And I just sat there thinking, saying, James Bond did this like 20 years ago, and I didn't realize like how terrible this really is. But I absolutely love him. Just any scene he's in, him and Brosnan just have something between them. There's like great chemistry, and the way like he walks around with his I mean, he says it, doesn't he, that he built Gustav Graves off of James Bond, how much he hates him. But the actual villain, I feel like, had been missing for a while. And listen, I'm obviously Electric King's much better, Sean Bean's much better, but I just probably the first villain since Zorin. We've not had that insanity about them, and I think it was needed. And we sit here almost 20 years later, and we've had some great villains in the last few years. And I wouldn't even say Silver's as insane as him. Silver's phenomenal, one of the best easily, but much better villain. But the performance of how over the top is, I think I miss it from Bond. I'm not saying I want it, but it's a lovely memory to go back to and look at this, knowing how much sort of worse it looks on paper in 2021.
It really is pantomime stuff. The performance he puts in.
If there's one complaint about Gustav Graves, is that they didn't give a big twirly mustache to twiddle as he was doing his lines. Go on, Brendan. You were going to say.
It's over the top. It's hammy. It's best not to also think. We discussed in our podcast. It's best not to think about his backstory, how he has become a billionaire in 14 months.
It's a message you, George, with that. I was like,
did I
read it
got
longer than 14 months?
Yes, and knighthood. Yeah.
The knighthood's what's thrown me. And all these years, I thought like he'd just bought the palace or something really insane. But this time around, I discovered, wait, he's been knighted after a year?
Yeah. So the Queen has seen that and gone, yep, New Year's honours straight away.
Not only is he pantomime, also I love the affectation that he doesn't sleep.
Yeah.
It's just so stupid. And they keep saying it, and it just makes you think that's just so daft. Like, what is that supposed to be scary that he doesn't sleep? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. And then of course he gets that robot suit
for no reason.
No.
That's not explained other than it looks cool. Colonel Moon, though, I think is interesting.
Yeah.
And the way that they tactically made it apolitical, he doesn't represent North Korea. His father is very much a traditional North Korean. He's not. And he has that cool scene at the start where he's got the kick bag and he's kicking the thing and they unzip it and the guy falls out. That's fantastic. He never uses his martial art skills again in the film, but he has learned how to fence in 14 months. Yeah, it's very distasteful. It's bad taste. You can't do that nowadays. That whole racial changing thing. It wouldn't stand up. You could imagine it in a Daniel Craig film. It just, yeah.
Especially the scene where like his father comes up to him at the end and he kind of touches the statue, doesn't he? Then touches Toby Stevens' face. Oh god, it's awful. It's so okay. This is.
But
if you were,
you're right.
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
No, sorry. I was just going to say he just really commits to it. And I think that was the only choice that he had. And I think fair play to him. He really gives it his all. And every scene, there's a brilliant scene where he's introducing Icarus to the world. And he's given this scene to this speech to deliver. it does not sound like what normal people would say. And
No.
what does he say about injecting our radiance into the party or something? You're just thinking, what is he saying?
And he's staring at Bond for the entire speech as well, which makes it even funnier. And it's just one of those really weird things where I think pantomime villains the best possible thing. And I know that I'd say he's had a redemption with the audiobooks as well. Before I hand over to Chris, that he voices Bond in the audiobooks. It's like, you know what? Fair play. I know he came back for 007 Legends, which was worse than Die Another Day. But I love him. I don't mind him. I'd love to have seen. I've never seen the deleted scenes. I know some they weren't allowed to release because of how raunchy they were, which might be mentioned later on. But Gustav Graves. Back to you, Chris. Sorry.
It's okay. I like, if we're going to take sort of like both halves of the character of Gustav Graves, and if you go with like Colonel, is it Tan Sun Moon? I think it is. Great character. Love the concept. I love the whole like father-son dynamic, and maybe the son's kind of wayward and breaking away from his father's agenda. That would be a great villain. That would be a great villain dynamic. If you're doing a page one rewrite, pick that, run with it. Great. If you pick a Gustav Graves, ridiculous, over-the-top pantomime villain, billionaire, philanthropist, all that good stuff, the mirror image of Bond in terms of image, it actually kind of reminded me of
Elon Musk.
No, like Edward Nygma, in like Batman Forever, where he kind of models himself on the appearance of Bruce Wayne for that public persona, that kind of thing. Great concept for a villain. Pick it, run with it. Don't merge the two together. That was where the problem came in it for me. Like, I loved the opening intro and all the stuff with Career was great. And I actually really like Gustav Graves as a villain. The fencing scenes, we'll talk about favorite scenes later, is easily one of my favorite scenes in the entire film. And I love that kind of dick measuring contest that he has with Bond, where he's, the stakes get higher and higher. And he's like, okay, the first one who draws blood from the torso wins. The fact that his entrance with the Union Jack parachute as well, having that knowledge now of the Bond franchise that's come before, like, what a statement, because that's one of the most iconic Bond moments in Bond's history. Love that. It's when he was the same character, and that really confused me, because I kind of looked away from the screen for a second, looked back. I was like, hang on, they said something about like a facial switch reconstructive surgery thing, and I messaged you, George. I was like, well, it just happened because I just missed something really big, and you was like, yeah, the Korean guy at the beginning is actually Gustav Graves. And from that point I was like, no, like, Bond has done some ridiculous stuff in the 40 years at this point. That's too far for me. And as we just mentioned, like, are we hearing ourselves talk here? In the 14 months he's kind of been elevated to the upper echelons of society. He's been knighted. He can do everything that Bond can do and more. He's got all this money. Was this a second operation he was running while he was in Korea as a Korean general? Like, he must have had this on the go beforehand, and he was playing the long game. I can't get over how ridiculous that is. And as I've said, Bond's done some stupid stuff. The whole plot, backstory, script just falls apart for me, and I can't handle it. He is funny, though. If you're talking about performances themselves, each respective performance, I think, does they do very, very well. Toby Stevens chewing all of the scenery in every single scene he's in, and he's great. The bit where he gets like the power glove at the end of the film, and he's like Emperor Palpatine force lightning Bond at the end with this like really awkward after effects effect that's over Bond. It's terrible, but it was kind of great. But from a plot standpoint, from a story standpoint, I just couldn't handle it. It was too much for me. It was a step too far.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely fair with him. I think he is one of those villains as well, where if you look at the people he surrounds himself with, it kind of makes it, I don't know if it makes it dumber or funnier. It's a really good segue to Miranda Frost. Now, Rosamond Pike is superb in so many things. Still one of the best performances I've ever seen in Gone Girl. I don't know how she did win the Oscar, but I did not know until this week this was her first ever film. And that has completely thrown me. And a lot of people talk about the Bond girl curse, where the Bond girls don't go on to have successful careers or stuff like that. But I was so shocked when I realized that. And what's kind of thrown me with this viewing as well was how absurd I guess you could say the special agents are this time around. So I forgot his name. The guy when Brosnan comes out, swims off a boat just casually into the hotel, and his friend is the Chinese spy after all.
Yeah, that was a great moment. I enjoyed that bit.
It was great. And I was like, hold on, I was like, so this spy has just got a casual second job at a hotel, and what's happened later on in this film? It's Miranda Frost, like, So was she a spy before she was a fencing gold medalist at the Olympics and then retired and became a publicist? Like, at what point did the spy work come in? So I've completely been thrown by now. I don't have a clue what's gone on with this character. But all I can say that Rosamond Pike is great in this. I think she is also somebody. I'm not going to say she could have benefited from another film. She obviously would have, but it's a kind of shame that she was like wasted in a supporting role, like the secondary Bond girl that's the villain type thing. And I wish we'd have got more from her later on down the line, but it's easy to look at it back now compared to then. But the publicist thing has completely 180'd me this week. I had no idea that was her spy work. And someone will say it's not realistic. Well, that British spy that got arrested in Germany a couple of weeks ago, he was a security guard apparently. So maybe I'm the one that just doesn't believe it.
I mean, you got to have the front, right? You know, Gus from Breaking Bad, like he's a successful businessman at a, you know, fast food chicken restaurant, and he's, you know, hard-boiled drug baron by night.
Yeah, so Rosamond Pike, yeah, that was 5 days into she was hired 5 days prior, and then started shooting, and her first scene was that scene with Judi Dench in M's office.
Oh wow!
So she says on the audio commentary that she just felt so surreal, you know, thrown in at the deep end, sat there opposite Judi Dench. But said Judi Dench was really great and was just reassured her, and that really gave her some confidence. But she did get a chance to make up for it in Johnny English, didn't she? Was she in the second Johnny English film?
Oh God, she was. Yeah, no, she was. I forgot about that.
Is that redemption? Maybe.
No, not
revenge.
Maybe
I
if it
think
was
more
Johnny
like
English one. Johnny English one, it would be redemption. Maybe not Johnny English 2.
I think she's really good in this. I think she gives it what she can. Interestingly, the character was written as Gala Brand from the Moonraker book originally, who is an MI6 agent who's embedded with Drax, and so that was the original idea. But obviously, then they put an extra twist on it, making her the double agent. But I think I like the scene where she sits down with M. I think that's a nice twist to the story. From then, it's very clear though that's the person that's betrayed Bond. I think anyway. You know, there's that whole discussion about who's betrayed Bond, and I think it's very clear that it's going to be her. I really like her in this, and you're right. She's gone on to bigger and better things. Maybe she is the one that broke the curse, because we've had a lot of really great female stars in the films since then. Eva Green specifically, you know, has gone on to have a massive career after Casino Royale. But yeah, I think she's good. She gets a good death scene as well, right? With the was it Art of War in the chest. Followed by one of the worst one-liners in Bond history.
So bad, in fact, I didn't even bother writing that one down. I acknowledged it. I was like, yeah, no.
There's a really great reaction video online. I can't remember who did it, but there's like it's a reaction video talking about her delivering the line, and then it cuts to Brosnan, and Brosnan just has the realization of what an absolute knobhead James Bond is when he delivers his lines, because Brosnan's face just drops when she does like the one-liner, and he's just like, this is what I've been doing for years. My life has been worth nothing.
There is a moment like that where it was kind of reminded me of the Dark Knight Rises thing. It's where Brosnan first sleeps with Halle Berry's character, then he wakes up and she's gone. It's like so that's what that feels like kind of moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, oh God, yeah, that one-liner. So that scene, actually, the fight scene at the end, the cat fight at the end of the film, that was a scene that I was aware of. You know, without seeing the film, that was you know, its reputation kind of preceded it. Maybe it's just a thing with Halle Berry and one-liners. You know, she didn't have a great one in the first X-Men film either. What was it? What happens to a toad when it gets struck by lightning? The same thing as everything else, which is just. Thanks, Joss Whedon. I think that was a Joss Whedon line, wasn't it? Maybe it was just him. But Rosamond Pike, yeah, I think she was great. I really liked her character. I loved the introduction during the fencing scene. I love her demeanor and how she's not afraid to sort of put Bond in his place. And, you know, she's been in the field. She actually, it's some expositionary dialogue, but I think it's done very well with them, where she says, you know, you've been on X amount of missions with all of these agents, and, you know, they've thrown advances at you and you've never succumbed at any point. I love the moment where they share that kiss outside the ice hotel, and in order to distract the guards, and then she says, "Are they gone?" He's like, "Oh, they've been gone for ages." And you can kind of see where future films have either ran with that trope or kind of maybe homaged it, because the one that I remembered, a more recent film, is The Winter Soldier, where there's that moment with Black Widow and Captain America where they say, you know, like, kiss me to distract the people. You've got it in Inception. So there's loads of other films that have ran with that trope. Don't know if that was a trope before this film or not. It probably was. But she was great until they ran out of things to do with the character, and then she's there just to have a cat fight with Halle Berry.
She takes her clothes off first, Chris.
Yes, I was going to mention.
She takes clothes
what
off
is
first,
she
and
wearing?
then she has the cat fight. Yeah.
What is she wearing? She's wearing yoga pants with a sports bra, and then like elbow length dominatrix gloves. I don't know what's going on with that wardrobe choice. It's like they had like a fancy dress chest, and was like, right, what have we got in here? Put this on and this and this. It's
well, funny you mentioned the costumes. Actually, this is something we were talking about on the podcast. Was there's another DVD extra on the DVD which has Lindy Hemming, the costume designer, and they cut to her and they say, "Oh, how's things going?" And she's just like, "The film is in awful shape. I've not been able to do costumes for anyone, and this is like, you know, days before they're about to start shooting." I think she says she's got Halle Berry coming in for a fitting, and the film starts shooting on Monday, and it's like Friday or something.
Oh my god.
And so you think the costumes are there, and also that final scene on the plane, that's a late addition to the story as well. So possibly the costume that she's wearing is from a previous version of it, and that's what she just ends up wearing because it's it's not practical, is it?
No, not at all.
I can't remember what they're doing on the plane. They're setting up the Icarus, right, to start this war between the North and South. But like, why would you put that costume on? Like, she's a secret agent, publicist, fencing double agent. Like, it's just a bizarre choice for her.
It's like with this movie, you know, they say, what occupation do you want your character to have? And they were just like, yes. It's just everything. Just give them everything.
The fact as well, there's the backstory that Gustav Graves made the other competitor OD, so she won the gold medal. That's a scandal that I'm not saying I want it to happen, but that'd be right up there with like the dogs that got poisoned at Crufts, the sadistic billionaire.
So Olympics happen every 4 years, right? As well. So this is a long-term plan for Moon.
He's got a lot of long-term plans, hasn't he? This guy.
There is a novelization by Raymond Benson I really want to read now. I was actually toying with the idea of buying it today. That's how like deep into Die Another Day I am, because I wonder how much of this stuff gets explained in the book. Apparently, he goes to great lengths to explain a lot of it. But
I've read the Gustav Graves James Bond Wikipedia page, and it's got his origin of the 14 months and how he's got his claim to fame, which was an incredible read. Because it also took me into
Star Wars novelizations, you know, where
it does, doesn't it?
Bad movies and then try and plug the hole with novelizations. Yeah,
it's like there's the guy in the background. Here's his origin story about his 14 months in Argentina, and he found a mine out of nowhere in Iceland. I'm like, right, okay, doesn't really make sense, but I'll take it. But oh god, and then I guess we can talk about Zhao. I've not seen Rick Yoon in many things. But you look at him in sorry, we can neighbour's dog's barking. But you look at him in this before he gets sort of pulverized with diamonds. Why couldn't we just have him be a diamond rather than a zombie? Like, I love the diamonds in the face. You know, I mean, you think they'd put them out over 14 months because they're right at the front of his face. But the whole here's a deformed Bond villain. Here's this weird stuff. He's a terrorist. He's all of this really interesting. And then they just waste him by he's kind of a zombie. But he's like, obviously, I know he's halfway through his progression into random European dude, which is something I've seen a lot on Twitter recently. I think other people have clocked it that I've seen a lot of accounts tweeting that this is who he would have been. You kind of wish it was like an A-lister or something, but Zhao, I think, is one of the worst henchmen, which is a shame because I think he has a phenomenal car chase scene, but also they've got a great actor in there. And going off the credit scene setup as well, he's the guy that Bond ripped half his face off, and you'd think there'd be a great story in there, but instead he's chilling in Cuba trying to become someone else, and I think he's kind of dead at setup in terms of what you want from a henchman.
Brendan, you were a fan of Rick Yoon, is that right?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it must be Wheatley.
He's in Fast and Furious 1.
Fast and Furious.
That's what he's in. Yeah, we've talked about him before. Yeah. I think he's underused massively as well. To the point where I forgot that he's the one driving the Jaguars. You know, every time I watch it again, I'm like, oh, it's him driving, right? Of course. But I agree. I mean, that look is so distinctive. A face full of diamonds. They could have just stuck with that, and it would have been much more interesting. And why does he need to go and undergo the the transition as well? Why does that need to happen?
Do you
It's
think
not
he gets a say
explained.
on like which face he gets? I think that was like a Carl Pilkington's diary moment where he said, "Do they have like a brochure of possible faces?" Because they
Catalogue.
mention it's like random people they've got a hold of, isn't it? Like, you know, hermits or whatever, like homeless people they find. Like, do they say you can have this face? Why would he go for sort of like generic European looking dude? Like, I don't know. Do you think you want to go for someone a bit more rugged, a bit more? I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
And would they
Thinking
not
about
take the diamonds out of his face?
Yeah, yeah. Or would it just be plastered over the diamonds?
Yeah.
Maybe, as you say, it's on the surface of his face. Just pluck them out. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a cool look. I guess it's novel. It's a
In-
novelty.
On paper, it's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
In reality, it's dreadful.
yeah.
But yeah, he's halfway through. That's why he's bald and why he's got the blue eyes and stuff. But it's a one trick, you know, henchman cornerstone, isn't it? Beyond the look, he's got nothing. At least with someone like Oddjob, you know, he's got the hat, he's got the supernatural strength, he's got the mute. It's all these things that combine to make someone memorable. Jaws as well, you know, he's a physically imposing presence. Rick Yoon, he's physically imposing, and when he gets his shirt off, you know, he looks great, but you know, you've got to give him the bald head and the blue eyes and the diamonds to just give him a personality. But like a physical deformity isn't a personality. You've got to add on top of that, and he just doesn't have that. Well, one thing I do like about him is his death scene, which I always forget about.
Good death scene.
Which is it's almost like a scaled down version of the GoldenEye death scene for 006, isn't it? Because he drops the chandelier on him, and it's almost like a scale model of the thing that he drops on Trevelyan. But it's just such overkill because he crashes the car into the water. That would kill him because it's freezing cold water. But no, he swims up to the surface and then he drops the thing on top of him just to kill him off, and then all the blood comes out. Oh, it's brilliant.
I swear there are so many moments in this film where people are just in freezing cold water and they're just fine. You know, it doesn't mean anything. Things don't mean things in this film. It's fine. People exist in their own plane of physics and reality. It is a cool death scene. I did like that. And, you know, the whole diamond conceit. Speaking of diamonds, I know it's the 40th, and we'll probably talk about some of the trivia and like the wink, wink, nudge, nudge moments, but I think it's Gustav Graves has a line in this film where he says diamonds are for everyone, and I was like, are you doing a thing? You're doing a thing, aren't you? And it was just like but yeah, the character himself just completely I don't really have much to say about him. Not in the plan, but can I talk really quickly about Mr. Kill?
You text me.
Like, was it last week, George? You said there's a character in this film called Mr. Kill. I was like, of course there is. You know, it's Die Another Day. Of course there's a character called Mr. Kill. I didn't know though, and I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation. It's Lawrence Macquarie. I don't know how you pronounce his name. Maori actor, massive Lord of the Rings fan. He played like 3 characters in Lord of the Rings, probably more characters, but Lurtz, Gothmog, and the Witch King in the Lord of the Rings. Tremendous, sort of like physically imposing actor. And it was great that he got to play Mr. Kill in probably the most memorable death scene for me in the entire movie, I would say, with the laser through the mouth. Again, really questionable CGI in that whole scene. It's really over the top and kind of terrible, but I thought it was a cool death scene for Mr. Kill. I don't really have much else to say about him, really.
And they chop his arm off using the laser, just in a weird, like brutal, like coda for his death. They're just like, how more ridiculous can we do this?
Well, so
let's chop his arm off.
We want to take that moment from Goldfinger and then just amplify it by like 1,000, isn't it?
And obviously he's part of the worst Bond lines of all time.
Is it the weird use the laser? That's the one I always think of.
No, it's the he goes, "I'm Mr. Kill. That's a name to die for." It doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even make sense at all.
It's like this whole movie. This whole movie doesn't make any sense.
Of course, that's when they just get to the ice palace. So of course it's going to be a nonsense line. It's like, oh, we've given up.
This film, it goes off the cliff when they go to Iceland. Let's agree. It's a schizophrenic film. It's up to that point, and he says that classic, you know, casual line: "Do you want to come to Iceland and see me launch my satellite?" It's like
that ice house. Like, I messaged you, George. I was like, this isn't a real place, is it? They haven't filmed this at like some kind of real retreat, because it looks like the love child of the Fortress of Solitude from Superman the movie and like Sydney Opera House. Like, what is this thing? It's so ridiculous. I know ice hotels exist, but this one, you know, like it's
The mine.
Yeah.
What's always surprised me is the Mines of the Eden project, which I'd heard of as a kid, but obviously that's in Cornwall, not in Iceland. And we went on a family holiday in Cornwall back in 2006. Obviously, I love Dine of a Day, and I was like, "Oh my god, we're on the Dine of a Day set." Obviously, it wasn't snowing outside; it wasn't cold, but it was contextually very weird choice that like the Eden project was a James Bond set. It's kind of cool, but weird.
I think it's just for one shot inside when she rappels down inside into the dome that you see
Oh,
at
is
the
it?
top of the Eden project. I think it conceptually was part of the idea for it. But the Ice Hotel is real. It's in Sweden and they build it every year. And it was part of a an expedition to find somewhere cool for a lair. And it's a great idea for a lair, but it's just like we were saying. I think it's underused. I mean, it's an amazing piece of work by Peter Lamont. But the way that it's shot as well. That introduction to Iceland is so jarring. It's so ugly. The score, the visuals, it's just so horrible. All the slow motion and stuff. I just think it's a real wasted opportunity.
And we were
Palace.
We were also saying how it never looks cold because it's clearly because it's built up Pinewood. It's obviously a set, but they don't even attempt to make it look cold.
There's no digital breath out of anyone, is there, or anything like that?
And all the ice looks plastic as well, because when Halle Berry's trying to smash it as well, it just smashes the thing.
I was getting mad Batman and Robin vibes from this, like Mr. Freeze's lair or something. It just looks so cheap. And I know it probably wasn't cheap, but it looks really cheap.
Shall we talk about the song?
Before I know I'm just going to throw one more thing in there, but talking about the ice lair, I do have to say one of my highlights of this film is the ice chase across the frozen lake with the two cars, because that is I think for me that's an all-timer Bond scene in terms of like the visuals. It looks fantastic. They shot it for real in Iceland, two cars going after each other on this lake, and it is mind-blowing that they were able to achieve it. And they were like, it really went down to the wire whether or not they'll be able to do it. And when you read Vic Armstrong's book, he talks about the cars skimming across the surface and the lake bouncing like a trampoline. And you can just imagine that. And that is just an incredible achievement, and should not be ignored really in this film. It is one of the true highlights, I think.
I would talk about it more in my favorite scenes, but I would say, to me, that's the best Bond car chase by a country mile. I think as a kid, what you want as a kid, you want to see James Bond driving Aston Martin having fun. That trailer shot of the ejector seat when it bounces to miss the torpedo, that is just definitive James Bond, and I absolutely love it. And the fact, I'm not a big car guy. I can't tell you much about cars, bar like James Bond, I guess, in F1, but the fact that even just the imagery of the green Jag up against the silver Aston Martin looks so great on camera. And I will say this is the one good time the weird slow-mo effect worked, because it looked like the start of a drag race when the cars come out. But the car scene is superb, and the gadgets used with it, the fighting of it, the fact the car's not actually invisible for this scene is probably the most important thing as well. So
it'd be the easiest car chase to film ever, wouldn't it, if it was an invisible car the whole way through?
But the car chase is superb for me, and also I love Zal's weird goggles. I don't know why he wears such big goggles, and it's always really jarring to look at. But yeah,
what do we?
But that's what we needed more of. Sorry, Chris.
I was going to say, what do we think of the invisible car as a conceit? Is that a step too far for gadgets for Bond? I was weirdly okay with the invisible car, and I don't know what that says about me, because there's some very maybe the other questionable stuff kind of eclipsed the invisible car for me. I don't know. I thought it was fine.
I think the issue is that it's unnecessary. I've got no problem with that technology. They've explained it, how it works. That's fine. Bond has always been about showing technology ahead of time, and that's what it's doing. Mm-hmm. But why?
Someone drives into it, don't they? Which kickstarts the whole car chase, and then beyond that, does it do anything else? No. It's the villain's death, isn't it? When he reverses it up the wall.
But he could have done that anyway.
Yeah.
And you would have seen, the baddies would have seen the ice tracks, right? Just the wheels in the snow.
It's the worst film for him to go to a location with an invisible car, because you can see the tracks.
Yeah.
It's just...
He's so close to the door as well. This always gets me. He's like 10 feet away from the door, and he's driving slowly still. And I've just never understood it. I don't mind the concept of the car. I don't think it's as bad as what people say. I love it. I love the fact that Brosnan negotiated to get an Aston Martin as well, and it unfortunately perished in a fire in his Yeah, and that's always really sad to read about. But I love that. It's not my favorite Bond car, but it's in terms of looking at these Bond retrospectives, I've moaned every week about the BMWs. Going back to Aston Martin is 100% what it needed to be, and it is superb. And
the way that they flip the idea of the ejector seat is just perfect. That's what this film needed more of. It needed to take the tropes of Bond that we know and love and just twist them and use them in new and interesting ways. And in that case, it really works. You think that is a cool moment where he flips the car. But in other times, it just doesn't work, right? I'm just thinking about it as well, with it being the 40th anniversary, the 60th anniversary is actually a diamond anniversary. So it would have made more sense to make diamonds the theme of the 60th anniversary rather than the 40th one. But I don't know why I was thinking about that.
20th anniversary drink along next year. Let's go.
Yeah.
I'm going to need a lot of booze for that. A whole lot of booze. Shall we go on to the main theme for this one then? Oh boy. I've got to find this rejected theme, which I heard about for the first time today. It's by a band called Red Flag. It's called Beyond the Ice. I didn't see anything on Wikipedia about the song. This is just on YouTube. It sounds like a Bond song though, and I think in terms of the visuals that the opening titles presents, you know, the whole concept of ice. Actually, the rejected title for last week's one, The World Is Not Enough, was Fire and Ice. I think that would have been a much more fitting title for this one. It's not a great title. In fact, it's a terrible title for a Bond film, but I think it would have made more thematic sense for this. That song, Beyond the Ice, not a great song, not particularly good song, but I think it sounds more of a Bond song than the one that we actually get. And of course, that's Madonna's Die Another Day, which is... I don't know if it comes almost bottom of the list, I think. Maybe penultimate, I would say. It's just, you know, I think Madonna definitely at the time, you know, amazing star and, you know, phenomenal vocalist. But this was when she was getting into the sort of like the modern pop, wasn't it? It was the early 2000s to mid 2000s kind of Euro pop kind of sound. And it just doesn't work for Bond for me at all. I like the conceit of, you know, the opening titles, you know, the 14-month gap, but that's more of a filmmaking thing. The song itself just sounds terrible to me. It doesn't sound anything like a Bond song. It doesn't have that grandiose feel to it. It's kind of obnoxious to listen to. I don't think it's a good pop song inherently. I think Madonna's done much better pop songs than that one, and I just kind of hate it. I just kind of hate it, and it was one of those songs where it just kept going on and on and on, and it felt unending. That opening title sequence felt agonizingly long, and then because we loved it so much the first time, we get a very nice slightly different remix reprise of it in the credits, don't we? So I think it's telling as well, because I imagine you know, I could be just, you know, hypothesizing all of this, but I imagine Madonna has her producers and the people that she wants to work with, and maybe wasn't too down for collaborating with David Arnold on it. And I think that that's where sort of like synergy is met with like the previous Bond songs that we've had, where you have David Arnold's input, it works into the score, and he can work with the vocalist and the artist who they get. And I imagine that Madonna, you know, might have been quite a diva about it, perhaps even down to the fact that she probably said, and I also want to be in the film as Verity, the fencing instructor, which wasn't as painful as I thought it was going to be going into it when I heard rumors that she was cameoing in the film. And I thought they handled her character kind of well, you know, as best as they could. But the song itself, I detest it. It's one of my least favorite Bond songs. Over to you, George, because I know that you love this one, don't you?
I do. I'm not afraid to add it. There's something about this song. Now, again, you know, I'm 6 years old. I've just seen James Bond being kidnapped and tortured, and there's this absolute tune playing in the background. So I've always liked it since I was younger. Even now, I still listen to it on my Bond players. I don't skip it. I let it carry on. Obviously, I know we're going to get Chris Cornell straight after, which is still probably the best one, if not. But I get everyone's criticisms with it. I completely will always understand it. But I just like the song. I like it in the credit sequence. I love the credit sequence itself. In fact, the scorpion pincers are all in sync with it as well. There's just something about this that I've always had. And the amazing thing is that I don't think I've actually ever listened to any of a Madonna song in my life other than that 3 minutes to Save the World from like the mid-noughties. I've never listened to an album. I don't know her music. I'd never seen her until
George.
But you know I'm not the music person. But what I will say about the cameo as well, because I'd never seen anything, I never knew it was her for like years as well. It was just some woman that was an instructor that I assume Bond had already slept with. So that's my piece on the song. I've got no complaints with it. I think it also fits how bonkers this film is. I'm going to say it. Yes, in another world, David Arnold sat down and did an incredible score, but I was about to say that the lyrics aren't that bad, but some of them are atrocious.
No, they're truly terrible. Some of them.
I don't know. I think it works for this film. You can't take that credit sequence with that song and put on any other Bond film. It's almost like they knew, and that's where I kind of strike a chord of it. I don't know how involved the director is with picking it. I know that obviously Eon do a lot, but I can imagine Lee Tamahori hearing the song in the pitch and thinking, yeah. But I will say, it has a fantastic music video, all bias aside. It's got an odd job thing. It's got a lot of Bond. It does a very good way at doing the Bond 40th anniversary. I'd say more than the film does.
I've been in your corner for most of this episode.
Join me,
Fine.
please.
And now you've lost me now. It's
Right.
Not only is it a dreadful Bond song, it's a dreadful song. Especially when, and you've not heard Madonna's other output.
No.
And that is, if you compare it to what she can do,
it's probably on par with her recent output, I think. But if you're going back to like 80s Madonna, even like Evita Madonna, Jesus Christ, like.
Yeah, and then to release this and to not even, it's not bespoke for Bond. It's Tom, did you say that it's based on a demo from an album that she was working on? So she's not even bothered to create anything specifically for the film, and it's not what this. If you regard that, you think it matches with this film being crazy. It's not what the 40th anniversary needed. It really isn't in any way. But it's good that David Arnold didn't maybe waste because the next song is an absolute belter in Casino Royale, and that's what happens when you collaborate and you work together. Look what can happen, and you don't just use your own producers. But yeah, I think it's awful, and it's the only thing about this whole movie that I have nothing good to say about.
Wow. Well, I'm in the middle. I think it's a great pop song. I think it's a bad Bond song. So I'm like right down the middle on this one. I remember it playing a lot on the radio at the time, and I still like hearing it on the radio. I just don't think it fits James Bond theme. So, Chris, you were asking about the cameo. MGM did a $1 million deal for the whole package. It was cameo, it was song, it was music video, it was promotion. And you mentioned the music video for this song. It's the third most expensive music video of all time, still to this day. And I don't remember it at all. But that's like a massive investment from Madonna and what she wanted to do. She said that when she was asked, she sort of wasn't sure about doing it. And the thing that she decided that Bond needed in 2002 was to be techno, which is the last thing that James Bond needed to be in 2002. But you're right. She was working on this album with Merways, the producer, and they just went back to the demos and said, let's use this one. And they sent it over to Eon and they said, it's good. It's not very Bondy. So they gave her a producer who put the strings on. And I think it's the strings that rescue the song and make it a Bond-esque theme song. But interestingly, she saw the first, probably the first act and the title scenes, and went back and changed the song to match the titles. And this is where the lyrics come in about Sigmund Freud, because she saw that the theme of the film was destroying James Bond's ego. And that's obviously a big theme within Freud's work. And so that's where that lyric and word comes along. But it's, for me, it's not the worst Bond theme song. Man with the Golden Gun, I think, is 10 times worse.
Lyrically maybe, or on par at least.
Yeah.
I think Madonna probably produced a better, if slightly more dated Bond song in Austin Powers: The Spy Who Shagged Me with Beautiful Stranger, which is a song that I absolutely love. It's kind of got that old-timey Bond feel maybe.
But I will say she's the right artist, the right time, just the wrong song. I think she is the perfect fit for Bond, and especially for the 40th anniversary. They really wanted to make a splash. They got Halle Berry, they got Madonna. And then, sorry, just one more thing. Going back, Beyond the Ice was the title that the press had decided that it was going to be called. So that was the rumor, and that was when they always talked about it in the press. Like No Time to Die was Shatterhand for like a long period of time, just because someone said it, and then they just kept saying that's what it was called. It was never called that. But Beyond the Ice was a press invented name for the film,
right?
But one that Purvis and Wade acknowledged could have ended up being the title of the film because they thought it was quite good.
I'm glad they went with Die Another Day, I must admit, in terms of titles. I think that's definitely a better title than Beyond the Ice. But yeah, the music's just a strange thing. I think Madonna as well, just the last thing I'll say, as an artist, and you can see that with her modern stuff, she's probably like a lot of artists, actually, long-running artists, that clamor to stay relevant and to move with the times. And that's the way that music was heading. You know, you look at the 2000s, techno was a big thing, sort of like dance music, club music. So
yeah, Paul Oakenfold remixes the theme song on the soundtrack. So like she was on the right track, but it needed they should have brought Tom Jones back to do it, or someone like that. Tom Jones was massive at the time. It would have been like the perfect opportunity. But no, we got this. And talking about the score, one other massive clanger to mention. I'm surprised no one's brought it up yet. Brendan, I'm surprised you've not mentioned it yet, but London's Calling.
Oh God. Yeah.
When that needle drops on the plane, it's just a absolute facepalm moment.
Yeah.
I just think
it's so easy. It's just such an easy choice to pick, isn't it?
I'll tell you why I don't mind it. I'll tell you why I don't mind it though. They play at halftime at every single Arsenal game I've ever been to at the Emirates. So every single time I watch an Arsenal game, I get reminded of Gustav Graves' entrance from James Bond, and it's lasted long in the memory because of that. Again, would be different if it had been the other way around, but there's something really charming about that for me. But they had many years to have done that song, but I think it's great.
It's just really jarring. It takes you out of it, and it's only really in there because it was the song that was British Airways were using at the time in their adverts.
Is that right?
And it's part of the product placement, so it's it's there for all the wrong reasons, and it's not the sort of thing they've done before in a Bond film.
No,
it's why they start doing it. It's just no.
I mean, that might be a contender for one of our worst scenes in the film. We usually go with favorite scenes, and we're still going to go with that as well, because there is some shreds of good stuff in this film. I think we can all agree. So if for this week, if we pick a favorite scene or scenes, you can mention a few, and your ultimate worst scene of the film. So for me, my favorite scene, I've kind of mentioned it. I really like the fencing scene. I think it's exceptionally well choreographed. You really get the sense that both of the people participating in the fight are getting worn down, beat down as the fight escalates. So I think that's without a doubt probably one of my favorite scenes in the film. I like some of the character stuff that Brosnan shares with M towards the beginning of the film. I don't know how he fakes a cardiac arrest. Did I miss something there? Like, is that another one of Bond's many skills that he has? I felt like I missed something there, but I liked the conceit of the character at that beginning and sort of where they were pushing the story at that point. And this is really a favorite scene. Seeing Michael Madsen in this film was a surprise. I didn't expect him to be in there. He's one of my favorite actors, usually obviously in a Tarantino film, but he was great in this for the small amount he got. And for worst scene, it's, again, low-hanging fruit. I've got to go with the tidal wave. It was just, I've seen it in reviews before. I've seen it in YouTube compilations of worst CGI, but seeing it in the actual feature film was an experience, and it was just so unnecessary as well. It was just so over the top and bombastic, and just you had the great ice chase before it, which was actually done in camera with a lot of great stunts, and then it kind of tarnishes that a little bit for me because you punctuate it with such a ludicrous moment. It felt like previs. I don't know how that got okay to be in a final movie. So that's probably my worst scene in the film, I would say.
Oh God. The tidal wave is bad. Best scenes, I've spoke a lot obviously about the car chase and the credit scene. I'm with you on the fencing one. In terms of Bond meeting a villain, I guess it's technically not the first time, but that initial meeting between them, one of the great Gustav Grey lines, like, "Course I want to bloody continue," just whacks out a massive sword. It's I think the fencing scene is actually really good. And when you do get the twist, watching it after, realizing that he is obviously not actually Gustav Graves, that actually kind of makes that scene even better on a rewatch, because you realize it's him. He actually just wants to kill him because it's James Bond. So I like the fencing scene for something not spoke about. I think it's a very underrated scene. I'd imagine some people probably don't like it too much, but worst scene, it is hard to look past the tidal wave just because of how much it stands out. It doesn't look like a James Bond scene. It looks like some previous done way before the film had ever come out, and I'm just trying to think of something else to vary it, but I physically can't pick something else that's not that.
Yeah, in terms of favourite scenes, it's going to be the two most real scenes. So it's going to be the fencing scene, which is great, and both of the actors actually did most of that fight. That they trained and learned fencing, and it shows. It really comes off, and it's Bond's in real peril at that point, and that's what makes it so gripping. You're like, oh, he's actually met his match, and this is great. And then the car chase, which we've talked about, fantastic. They did that for real. It looks brilliant. It is one of the best car chases in Bond history. So the worst is the one that is the complete opposite, that takes you out of it. And it is that surfing scene. And the problem is they've showed us real surfing right at the beginning of the film. And now they decide, we're going to show you surfing again, but this time, none of it's real. And the company behind that, when they're asked to do it, they just said yes to the director, went away, did it, spent so much time working on the look of water and ice, which in 2002, very difficult to create with CGI. Spent so long that they didn't have time to put Brosnan, to properly render Brosnan on the waves. And it shows. It's terrible.
All right, I'm going to go out some left field choices. I think you've covered all the best ones already, but best scenes, Blades, obviously, in the fencing scene in there. I love that. All that's missing from that scene is another level where they pull out lightsabers and they start playing with lightsabers.
I was wondering if someone had done an edit maybe on YouTube of the lightsabers in that scene. They probably have.
They need to. I think that's an absolutely iconic Bond scene. It's very, Bond. It's like the evolution of Bond playing golf with Goldfinger. It's like it just takes it to another level. So I think that's fantastic. The other scene I was going to say is when he goes to Havana and meets the sleeper agent. And again, it's a very grounded, very real scene. And I love the idea of this guy in Cuba who's the British agent there, and that had just such great potential, and it's just such a fleeting moment of greatness in that film where he's the sort of character that they could have come back to many times, and he could have been like their man in Havana. I think he's really good. But
is that the cigar guy you're talking about?
The cigar guy, yeah.
He was great. He was cool.
He is cool, and
he's got a touch of Kerim Bay. That's
exactly.
That sort of vibe, isn't it?
Very Fleming-esque, isn't he? Yeah. So that's the best scenes, and then in terms of the worst scenes, the CGI tsunami cannot be discounted. But for me, it's a dialogue scene, and it's a scene that feels like it was written on the day it was shot, which is when Bond meets Jinx for the first time, and they have this really, really bizarre exchange, which. It's almost Star Wars prequel levels of like badness in terms of the dialogue. I just thought there's stuff about the ornithology and the feasting, and it's so stilted and so out of place. And you just think, is that really the best they could come up with when these two iconic secret agents meet each other? It's like they're talking in, like the code words that spies give each other to say, I'm a spy and you're a spy and we're all on the same page. But that's not even it. That's not what they're doing. They're actually just having a conversation, and it's one of the worst conversations ever committed to film. And for that, it's my worst moment.
I'll agree with that. I'm going to just chuck two other quick scenes in there before we go on to final thoughts for this, which I really enjoyed. The Q scene with John Cleese. It's the first time that we get to see him as Q properly in the film, and unfortunately the last time as well. But I liked the room with all the gadgets. I know it's probably a bit on the nose, but it was the 40th anniversary, and it was fun looking at some of the Easter eggs. I think you get the blade boot, don't you, from Russia with Love. There was the jetpack, of course, and then I saw the crocodile from, I want to say it was either Live and Let Die or Octopussy.
And the Accra Star from For Your Eyes Only as well is there.
Yeah. My issue with that scene is they've gone back and retrieved all those things and are storing them in Q's lab.
I'm fine with it.
You're fine with that? Okay.
There's way more ridiculous things in that film. They kind of compounded on each other, and the previous one got lesser and lesser as more stacked up. And the other one I'd say is I got a laugh out of this. I thought it was kind of a nice moment in a weird way. Samantha Bond's final scene as Moneypenny, where she's got the glasses on. I was hoping for the final scene, if you didn't have that payoff at the end where John Cleese walks in, I was hoping that to cap off Brosnan's era, have him finally plant that kiss on Moneypenny. Have that happen, and I would have been really happy. I've been shipping this since the 60s, for God's sake. Like, finally let me have that payoff to it. I don't know.
I can't believe I didn't mention this.
It gave us something to do because, you know, I was actually really looking forward to seeing Samantha Bond's take on the character, and I feel like they just didn't do anything with her. So it's a gag, but it's something. I don't know. I just loved seeing her get with Pierce Brosnan. Sue me.
I'm not a fan.
Yeah, not a fan.
Not a fan.
No,
Okay,
no.
that's fine.
So much so that I didn't even have it as my least favorite scene because I've deleted it from my brain.
Every time it comes up, there's that training scene as well with Bond. He goes through the VR scene as well, and that's also
that was
really
strange.
bad.
Yeah.
The
thing
thing
with
being ahead of
Moneypenny-
its time, though.
Yeah, the thing with Moneypenny is that it's the power needs to be within that Moneypenny, like that she needs to hold control of that situation. The relationship between them is that Bond flirts with her, she flirts back, but she's not really truly interested in Bond. She's just playing him along, and this, I think, is a portrayal of Moneypenny. If I'm being honest, I think that this is beneath her, and it's demeaning for her, and it's silly, and it's unfair, and I think it's a shame that they did it, to be honest. So I have to massively disagree with you, Chris.
That's fine. I think I keep going back to the ending of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, where there's that knowing glance between the two of sort of like what could have been, and I've held on to that since that film. I've held on to it, and I wanted to see the two of them together in some way.
But
So
Samantha Bond is no Lois Maxwell. Let's just
no, that's
put it
true.
that
That is
way.
true. I will 100% agree with that. I guess we go on to sort of like final thoughts on the film then. If they
You're not doing your one-liners.
Oh God, yes, one-liners. Yeah, there are a few.
I've got one, but it's not actually from Bond. Can I say it? Someone we've not spoken about. I love Vladimir, and one of my favorite comedic moments in the entire film is the boss. He just beat your time. Perfect. Gustav Graves' response, perfect. Absolutely love it. My favorite one from this film, I Country Mile.
There's one moment in this film, and it's not really a one-liner. It's kind of a moment, and I might be misremembering this, so please correct me if I'm wrong. It's when he breaks into, I think it's like the South African guy's room, and then Bond just looks over on the bed. He's like, "Hi, you're all right," and she knows him by name. Did that happen? Did I miss that part? Or it looked like he already knew the woman who was with this guy on the bed, like from a previous encounter. It was just like, "Hi," and then he says her name, and she's like, "Hi, what's up?" And then he leaves the room. Did I misremember that completely wrong? Is that not what happens? I thought that's what happens. It's in Havana.
I think you may have been there watching it half cut, maybe.
Maybe. I need it. Anyway, these are official one-liners, which I did write down. Don't blow it all at once at the beginning with the diamonds was a great one. Saved by the Bell, because I was waiting for it. I was like, give me a one-liner. Come on, give me one. And I was trying to predict it, and I can't believe I didn't predict Saved by the Bell. That was a great one. There was a small exchange here. I trust Bond has been explaining his Big Bang Theory. I think I got the thrust of it. But I think my favorite overall is the final exchange where it says, time to face destiny and time to face gravity. Oh, that was a cool one. It's a cool one-liner before the Bond villain's taken out. That's it for me. Anyone else got any decent one-liners for this one?
I like Frost's line, "I know all about you, sex for dinner, death for breakfast." I just think that really does sum Bond up.
Yeah.
That was going to be my choice as well. I think that's fantastic. Again, an iconic line. I like the dreadful ones in this film. The "your mama" one that Jinx has. A Name to Die For also there, and then the where Gustav Graves goes. It's not even a one-liner. It's not even a quip. It's, "Oh, look, parachutes, 2 parachutes. Not anymore." Like, is that the best you can come up with? Which obviously then leads to a fantastic death scene. But it's got a lot of ripe one-liners, this film, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, final thoughts on the film then, as if it hasn't been abundantly clear from all of us already from our review. For the first half of this film, I was with it, and I was pleasantly surprised, and I was questioning, why does everyone hate this film? as much as everyone does. I just didn't see it. I really liked where they were taking the character with Bond. The whole torture thing I thought was a really cool concept for his final film as well, and the dynamic with him and M. But the film very quickly, as we mentioned, as soon as it gets to Iceland, just completely jumps off a cliff repeatedly until the end of the film for me. The CGI, everyone's talked to death about the CGI, the over-reliance on it, and I think those criticisms are justified for the film. The direction, it just feels mismatched. There's not much there with the script or the story. And, I love my schlocky films. I do. And if people like this as a guilty pleasure film, I can absolutely understand why. It just felt tired. It just felt like it was done. It was making a parody of itself at this point. So knowing the film that followed this one, it's just what the franchise needed, in my opinion. If they wanted to go bigger and better and badder than everything else because it was the 40th anniversary, I appreciate that concept, but they went way too far. They went miles too far. So I'm glad the following one, they did go with a soft reboot because I think it's what the franchise needed. And I think it's a shame that this is Brosnan's last one. Some people might view it fondly because it's a guilty pleasure film, but seeing sort of like the dramatic side of what he brought to the character and the intrigue with the likes of The World Is Not Enough and, elements in GoldenEye as well, I think it's just a shame. It just feels like a tired concept by this one.
Yeah, I mean, objectively, it is a bad film, arguably the worst Bond film. But for me, I can just take so much fun out of this. If when they talk about this Sunday afternoon films, it's a rainy day. What Bond film would you pop on? Maybe not this one first, but it's going to be nearer the discussion point of To Kill a Couple of Hours at a Time. And I just personally just get a lot more kick out of this than a lot of other Bond films. It's, as you said, for the awful stuff, it has some all-time serious highs. That car chase that we spoke about as well, I could happily watch that any day. It's an Aston Martin getting driven around on ice, for God's sake. There's so many good things with it. It's got a kind of villain you're having a fun time with. It's got Pierce Brosnan playing James Bond still. So for me, of course, it's naturally questioned, and rightly so, for some of its atrocities, but don't forget the good things from it. I don't think it's fair for people to go in as hard as they do without picking out the stuff that is that good. So I don't mind it. It's very, very watchable.
George, I'm back in your corner. You've got me back. I couldn't agree more. You know what? It's an easy target for so many people to just give it a right kick in because of the points that do jump out. The CGI, the questionable dialogue. But no one can deny it's fun. It's nonsense, yes, but it's fun nonsense. And there are Bond films that are harder watches than this, that feel like a slog. And this, because the nonsense sort of helps it in a way, it keeps it going along. And for me, it's nowhere near the top, but then it's not at the bottom either. I've got a soft spot for this film, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's no two ways about it. This is a bad film on almost every level. It's bad. It's ugly. It's poorly plotted. But there is a charm to it and a pace to it that cannot be ignored. And I know there will be people out there, who just say that the sins that it commits are too unforgivable to outweigh the positives that you can take from it. But I disagree. I think, like Brendan says, there are worse Bond films. There are Bond films that are much more of an ordeal or a trudge to get through, and not naming any names specifically. Spectre. No, I'm just kidding. No, I like Spectre. But Diamonds Are Forever, for example, which is another film that we've covered recently, that is a really boring film, and it's really ugly, and it's really hard to watch, and it's a drudge to get through. Whereas this, I think I'd watch this. I think I'd even watch this over The World Is Not Enough, because it's just got so much fun to it. Brosnan is brilliant in it as well. I know that I just think he's so magnetic as Bond. And yeah, it's a shame it's his last one, but I'm glad that he made it. I know he's not a fan of it, and neither was Roger Moore. By the way, he gave it a bit of a kick in as well. But I think when we're looking at 100 years of Bond, I think we'll look back and it'll be of its time, like all the other like dodgy James Bond films were of their time. There's a time and a place for them, but as with all James Bond film, there's always something you can enjoy.
Yeah.
And with Die Another Day, there's as much to enjoy as there is to hate. And the stuff that you hate is funny. It's like, it's not bad because it's like, it is bad because it's bad, but it's bad in a fun way. It's like I don't know. It's like watching a car crash in places, isn't it? It's you can't take your eyes off it.
Hauntingly beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And on that bombshell, I think that'll do it. But I think it's been a very balanced discussion on this film tonight. I think we've approached it in every avenue possible. So I think there's something for everyone out there if you're watching this review. And of course, we want to hear from you guys as well. This is pre-recorded, so hopefully you guys have been commenting along. But let us know what you think of Die Another Day. Do you think it's worthy of all the hate that it deserves? Or do you two think there's some good stuff in this? Anything regarding this film? Or just Bond in general. We love talking about the James Bond franchise with you guys. Please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe as always. And we will be back next week. That's going to be Tuesday, the 7th of September, with the big one, Casino Royale. Brand new Bond with Daniel Craig. And starting that one is very much going to feel like the final stretch, isn't it, I think, George, in that lead up to No Time to Die. This was the first Bond film I ever watched. I got a lot of fond memories about this one, and I think that's going to be an immense discussion for that one. Can't wait for that. So that's going to be Tuesday, the 7th of September, again at 8 p.m. BST, as it is every single week.
Definitely. And guys, if people at home that don't follow you, they should check it out in the description. We've kind of said what you're up to, but where are we in the A to Z? What letter or films or have we got coming up or just been?
So I'm just looking at the release schedule actually, because so this will go out. Is it the week? Is it next week?
31st, yeah.
I don't know if you mentioned how long you pre-record for, but so we will be releasing our episodes on Diamonds Are Forever very soon. We've recorded a couple of episodes on that one, which goes into the making of the film, and then we've got an interview with someone, a very vocal fan of the film as well. Someone who's written a lot of stuff about the positives of that film. So hopefully that will counterbalance our negativity towards the film itself. And then after that, we'll have our own Die Another Day episodes. Again, one which dives into the making of. So anything we've discussed here, we'll discuss in more depth. Then I think it's a very detailed episode, Brendan. You said it's our longest one.
Yeah, it's our longest one. It's as long as the film. So I don't know. But we seem
We're
to
no
have
strangers to that on some of our reviews on these films.
I think because it's an important place in the Bond franchise, and people have got strong opinions on it. And it divided us three, didn't it? You know, when we recorded it. So yeah, be sure to check that out. It might not be as much as a slog for some people as the film.
Yeah, and then obviously we've got No Time to Die, which will come out, and I'm sure we'll find a way to commemorate that in some way. And then we've got Dr. No, which is one that I think we're all really excited to get stuck into, because you know it's the one that started it off, and it'd be a nice one to revisit after No Time to Die. I think it'll be a good place to get stuck into them. But then, you know, I've planned ahead, and the podcast is looking like it's going to be going at least for the rest of, you know, the anniversary year next year, and possibly even into the year after, when we might find out who the next James Bond is before the podcast comes to its natural end. So yeah, that's where we're at.
Awesome. Go and check them out. Now that I've actually seen this film, I'll be able to check your guys' review out when it comes out for Die Another Day. I always like to watch the films first to give them fair shake, but that's incredible. Thank you for jumping on, both of you as well, taking the time out to join us for Die Another Day. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I guess that will do it. Hopefully you guys have all enjoyed the review. And as I mentioned, we've got plenty of other stuff coming out on the channel as well. We have other movie reviews that come out. But if you are here for Just Bond, as we mentioned, next week, starting the Craig films, and it's going to be incredible. So thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.
Thank you.